On the map, Greenland looks empty. Ice, distance, and silence. But to the United States, the island means more than you can imagine. That's why the United States wants Greenland so badly. On a world map, Greenland looks distant and isolated, a massive island covered in ice at the edge of the Arctic. But when the map shifts perspective from continents to flight paths and Great Circle routes, Greenland suddenly becomes central. Greenland sits directly between North America and Europe. The shortest air and missile routes between the two pass over the Arctic, not the Atlantic. On these polar paths, Greenland is not off to the side, it is directly underneath them. From northeastern Canada to northwestern Europe, it occupies the space in between. Any aircraft traveling the eastern United States toward northern Europe naturally arcs toward Greenland due to the Earth's curvature. That same geometry applies to long-range missiles and early warning systems. This positioning has been relevant for decades. During the Cold War, Greenland became critical to North American defense planning for one simple reason: anything coming across the Arctic would pass nearby. The reality hasn't changed, and if anything, melting ice and increased activity have made the region more accessible and visible on maps. Geography limits alternatives. There are few large land masses in the Arctic capable of hosting infrastructure, and Greenland is by far the largest, offering space, elevation, and direct line of sight across the polar region. Other Arctic islands are either much smaller, heavily fragmented, or closer to rival territories. From a purely geographic standpoint, it functions like a bridge across the top of the planet. Control of infrastructure there does not mean control of the Arctic, but it does mean visibility across it. On a standard map, it looks like a remote ice sheet, while on a strategic map, it sits at the crossroads of the northern hemisphere. And that difference in perspective is where American interest begins. But scale alone isn't what draws attention. As the map tilts northward, the focus shifts to what sits at the edge of American reach. Looking closer at northern Greenland, the map reveals something unusual. Near the northwest coast, far above the circle, sits one of the most strategically positioned military locations on Earth, Thule Air Force Base, also known as Patuxent Space Base. This location was not chosen randomly. Thule sits at a latitude where the Arctic becomes a direct corridor rather than a barrier, and from there, radar systems observe activity across vast portions of the polar region. During the Cold War, it made Greenland indispensable for early warning systems that were designed to detect incoming missiles traveling over the Arctic. The geography matters more than the tech. Radar coverage improves dramatically at high latitudes because long-range trajectories compress toward the poles. And from Greenland, a single installation can monitor paths that would otherwise require multiple bases farther south. Thule's surroundings amplify this advantage. The terrain is flat, stable, and sparsely populated. There are no major cities nearby, no civilian air traffic congestion, and no minimal electromagnetic interference. This creates ideal conditions for sensitive detection systems. Distance works in Greenland's favor. The base is far from most population centers, reducing risk while also increasing response time. And if something crosses the Arctic, Greenland is often the first place that it can be seen. More importantly, it offers something rare: permanence. Unlike drifting sea ice and smaller islands, Greenland provides a fixed landmass that's capable of supporting long-term infrastructure. Runways, radar arrays, and satellite systems require stable ground, and Greenland provides it at scale. On the map, Thule looks isolated, when in reality it sits directly in the line of sight of the Arctic. From radar lines and runways, the view pulls back, revealing an island shaped as much by ice as access. On most world maps, Greenland appears as a frozen, unusable mass, a vast white shape that feels empty and inhospitable. But when geography is examined more closely, the island's true significance becomes clear. Greenland is the largest island on Earth, larger than Mexico and 3 times the size of Texas. While much of it's covered by ice, that doesn't make the land irrelevant. It actually defines it. Roughly 80% of Greenland is covered by an ice sheet, but the remaining coastal regions form a long and broken ring of exposed land. These coastal zones are where nearly all settlements, infrastructure, and transportation exist. From a geographic perspective, this creates a predictable and controllable layout. Activity concentrates along the edges, while the interior remains naturally isolated. The ice itself is not static. Glacial movement slowly reshapes valleys, fjords, and coastlines. As ice retreats in certain regions, new terrain becomes accessible. These changes don't happen overnight, but they are measurable and ongoing. On maps tracking elevation and surface exposure, Greenland's usable land has been expanding along select coastal corridors. Elevation also matters. Large portions of Greenland rise well above sea level, even near the coast, providing stable ground for long-term installations that are away from risk of flood and storm surge. In the Arctic, elevation can be rare. Greenland has it at scale. The island's interior, though largely covered by ice, functions as a natural barrier, limiting the movement across across the island while funneling access along specific routes. From a geographic standpoint, this will simplify monitoring and control. There are few paths in and few paths out. Greenland's sheer size also creates spacing. Infrastructure can be widely separated, reducing vulnerability to single points of failure. In Arctic geography, space is a form of protection. While on the map it may look frozen and distant, in reality, the land is structured, elevated, and slowly changing. Beneath the ice, geography does the quiet work, and that work is reshaping how the island is used. On the map, Greenland looks locked in white, but on the edges it tells a different story. When distance is measured across a globe instead of a flat map, the Arctic stops looking like a remote void and begins revealing itself as one of the shortest pathways on Earth. Greenland sits directly beside this path. Great circle routes, which represent the shortest distance between 2 points on a sphere, curve northward. Flights traveling between the eastern United States and northern Europe naturally arc over the Arctic. The same geometry applies to routes connecting North America with parts of Asia. On these paths, Greenland is not off to the side. It sits directly along the curve, and this matters because geography favors proximity. Any region located near transit corridors become relevant because it passes close enough to be influenced by it. Greenland occupies that position in the Arctic. As seasonal ice patterns shift, Arctic transit routes have become more predictable during certain months. These routes face limitations, but their presence has reshaped how distance across the northern hemisphere is understood. Greenland remains consistently adjacent to those corridors, regardless of seasonal condition. Unlike much of the Arctic, Greenland offers permanence. Large areas of the Arctic consist of drifting sea ice or fragmented island chains. Greenland is a single stable landmass and doesn't move. It doesn't fragment, and this stability allows for long-term planning and fixed infrastructure in a region where permanence is rare. The island's coastline strengthens this advantage. Greenland's deep fjords cut far inland, forming natural harbors that are shielded from open ocean conditions. These geographic features provide sheltered access points that are uncommon in polar regions, where coastlines are often exposed and unstable. Elevation plays a role. Greenland rises well above the sea level in many coastal areas, offering terrain that's less vulnerable to flooding and ice movement. In the Arctic, where low-lying land is common, this elevation adds geographic reliability. As Arctic passages begin to open, the map widens, showing why this route matters far beyond the island itself. When Greenland is placed on a map relative to North America, one relationship becomes immediately clear. Greenland is not only part of the Arctic, it's part of the North American geographic system. Geologically, it sits on the North American tectonic plate. Its bedrock, structure, and continental alignment tie it physically to Canada rather than Europe. On a deep time map, Greenland is not an overseas outpost. It's an extension of the same continental mass. Distance reinforces that connection. Greenland is far closer to North America than mainland Europe. The shortest route between the eastern United States and Greenland crosses the North Atlantic in a direct arc, while access from Europe is longer and more exposed to open ocean conditions. From a geographic standpoint, it naturally aligns westward. Greenland also sits directly north of the continental United States. On a polar projection, it appears not as a remote island, but as an extension of the northern frontier. This positioning connects Greenland to North American airspace, early warning geography, and Arctic monitoring zones in a way that no other country can replicate without crossing U.S.-controlled space. Other nations approach Greenland from the side. The United States approaches from below. From a purely geographic perspective, it fits naturally into North America's northern arc. The location complements existing infrastructure, radar coverage, and Arctic access across routes that already extend outward from the U.S. mainland and Canada. While on a political map, Greenland belongs to Europe, on a geographic map, it belongs to North America. And geography is the reason American interest doesn't fade. From sea routes to solid ground, attention settles where control becomes permanent. When the United States looks north, it is not searching for territory. It's responding to a geographic problem that only Greenland can solve. The Arctic is becoming more relevant as distance across the northern hemisphere compresses, routes shorten, activity increases, and visibility across the pole matters more than it did in the past. But most Arctic regions come with trade-offs. Some are too fragmented, some are unstable, some are close to rival spheres of influence. Greenland avoids many of those problems at once. It's large enough to matter. Its landmass provides space, elevation, and separation that smaller Arctic islands can't. And it's stable enough to support permanent infrastructure in a region dominated by ice and seasonal change. It's positioned directly between North America and the rest of the northern hemisphere. Geography limits the alternatives. Northern Canada contains vast territory, but much of it is broken into islands that are separated by ice-choked channels. Eurasian Arctic regions are closer to competing powers and less isolated. Floating ice can't support long-term systems, and Greenland remains remains the only place where scale, permanence, and location overlap. For the United States, it creates a rare geographic alignment. Greenland doesn't require extending reach across continents. It fits naturally within the northern arc of North American geography. Access routes are shorter, visibility is more clear, support is easier to maintain. This is why interest in Greenland is not temporary. It doesn't rise and fall with administrations and headlines. It persists because the map doesn't change. As long as the Arctic remains a shortcut rather than a barrier, and distance across the globe bends northward, Greenland will continue to sit where attention naturally gathers. On the surface, it looks like ice and emptiness, but on the map, it solves more problems than any other place in the Arctic. That's why the United States keeps looking north. Greenland isn't important because of politics, it's important because of where it sits. Distance bends towards it, routes pass beside it, stability holds it in place. On the map, it may look remote, while on the globe, it becomes central. As long as geography shapes how the world connects, Greenland will remain impossible to ignore. The world is full of mysteries, and we're here to crack them. Thanks for watching World Cracked. Be sure you subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.